in the area of revitalization, there is nothing wrong with small churches. In fact, I believe millennials are tired of larger churches, by the way. And in fact, one of the reasons millennials are starting to start what I call these satellite services with maybe a Thursday night, maybe a Tuesday night, maybe a Saturday night, is because millennials feel more comfortable with small than they do with big. My daughter, and my son for that matter, are millennials. My daughter chooses to go to a church that is about a third the size of the church that Cheryl and I are members of. I'm hardly ever there because I'm in 269 other churches, but 68 other churches. But we go to a church that, you know, is larger and it's got a Sunday school class that fits our age group and all that. She thinks it's too big. And she goes to a church that is a much more intimate and in her point, much more relevant. Now, both preachers are great preachers, so it is interesting how that kind of shakes out even in our household. But you know, when you think about church revitalization in a small church, I really want us to begin to think about just some of the things that are required. Let's see, I guess this is not on, and I'm not going to make you come all the way to the front to do that again, because then I would look stupid twice. All right, so there we are. All right, by the way, if you go to renovateconference.org and hit /resources, there's about 8,000 resources out there. My books are out there. You can buy. You can't get my books free, sad to say. And I write my books because it is something I love doing, and my wife loves my books because I write books. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. But anyway, but you can get a ton of resources out there, and there's probably something out there. Renovate works on the philosophy of just-in-time resourcing. When you need this, like I just got done teaching last Thursday, dealing with abusive laity in the church. Yeah, it was hot downloading. Downloaded about 23,000 downloads in 48 hours. You know, and of course, Renovate is not just looked at by Baptists; it's looked at by everybody. But most of my resources out there are what I call just-in-time resources. How do you transition from one service to multiple services? How do you save First Baptist Church? How do you, it's just, I'm more of a how-to. There are a lot of books out there today that are what I call 50,000-foot, hey, everybody, we need to revitalize churches. And I wrote one of those a while back. But I don't write those anymore. I write the 100-foot level. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work. I say it this way, and just the bold vernacular that I use, help save a nation, revitalize your church. And if you want to see America return again, we need to save our New Testament churches that are preaching the good news of Jesus Christ. And that's the best way. And small churches are a huge part of that army. Now, I said something when I was on stage that one or two of you clapped, and I'm not going to go reiterate all of that stuff, but there is a viable piece for the small church in America, and you need to really be thinking about it. It's all not about big. I'm not against big, but don't make it at the cost of the other size church. The small church is the beginning of our American religious heritage. Abraham Lincoln said it this way. He said, God must really love small church. He made so many of them. And for Lincoln, I guess that was his kind of way. But during the early days of Plymouth Rock and small church was more like house church and more like home churches, or churches, if you don't like the term house church, churches that meet in homes. That's how we get away from people who don't like the other term. But anyway, but a small church is really a unique church. If you pastor a small church, how is it that everybody knows when somebody's on vacation? It's because you are so intimately interconnected that when the Johns family or the Brown family goes on vacation, you're not only praying for them, but you can't wait until they get back. You miss them. There's a few of you who wish they would take a long-term sabbatical, but most of the church really, miss them. Paul Madsen said it this way: the small church has no different mission than any other church in the land, regardless of size. It may use different methods to achieve that mission, but the mission of proclamation, the mission of fellowship and ministry, the mission of service is all the same. It just doesn't matter. God may put you in a place that's just as viable as small town America as he does somebody at first, whatever, Atlanta, I guess, you know. So it is not that, I know people used to always say things like, I can't wait until I grow big enough that I can have a big church. Why would you ever want that? Be careful what you pray for. I prayed for that when I was a kid, and I was just stupid. Because you know what? You get to work more hours. You get to have a whole lot more headaches. You get to have a whole lot more responsibilities. I thought working about 50 hours a week was really good. Now I get to work about 72 and hate it. You got to be careful what you pray for. You just might get it. But if God gives it to you, he'll give you the grace to handle it. But it's astonishing to realize that 90% of all our churches today are not growing, and that churches with 100 to 200 total members, 50% of those churches have plateaued. So don't think at all the 100 to 200 member churches in America are plateau churches. They're not. About 50% of the 100 to 200 in attendance have plateaued. Another 19% have declined, leaving only about 30% of those churches, that are growing. Some are stuck. But I got to tell you something. I would rather be a plateaued church at 100 than a rapidly declining church at 15. You can be plateaued for some seasons, and by that it may be months, it may be a year, but you can have time to recapture a vision in a small church that's plateaued. But if you are meteoric in decline, boy, you better fasten in and do something pretty quickly. Did you know, I shared this earlier about, 44,000 churches have an attendance in the 8 mainline denominations, that literally, 344,000 out of over 380,000 churches in the Western Hemisphere are in decline. If you do the math, that's 95% of all the churches. In North America, most of our churches average 100 or less. Did you know that? Most of our churches, we only have 780, as I said before, of mega churches. Not everybody's running out to join a mega church. I'm thankful for the mega churches. I got many in my association, and frankly, that's why I have a paycheck. But at the end of the day, they're just like any of our other churches. They may do it a little differently. They may do it a lot louder. They may have to do it with more people. But if you are a church, don't hang your head. Don't drop your head in the ground like, I'm just a church of 75. I think you ought to stretch your stuff. I'm a church of 75, and I don't have near the misery that you have. We always want to compare things. Well, let's compare it realistically. I get to sleep and go fishing. You don't. You're out doing a funeral. I don't have enough people dying to go do a funeral yet. So just, I'm sorry, is that too real? I'm sorry. I'm going home tomorrow, and some of you will be thankful. Every year, 3,500 to 4,000 churches die in North America. In our denomination, last year, we closed 900 churches last year. Now, why that is significant, there was a day in denominational life where we were planning 1,500, 1,835 was our greatest year ever in the history of Southern Baptist planting churches. People used to ask, why are mission agencies so aggressive about planting churches? Well, it's because we close 900 to 950 every year. Now we plant 950, we pat ourselves on the back that we broke even. We must get back again to the planting of churches, to the revitalization of our churches in North America. And when we close 900, Lord, they're not all church plants. Some of those are your neighbors. And some of those are my neighbors. Some of those are my churches and your churches, and on it goes. We got to do everything we can to, I don't think, even though Neil, said that he, some ought to die, and I think we agree on some things, there are some churches that need to be restarted and never be named as the church it was before. But I think God has a way to do a new thing. As Southern Baptists, we are blessed with great buildings. And I'm not all about brick and mortar, but there isn't a church planter out there on the face of the earth who's one of our planters who wouldn't give his right arm to have a building to start with. I used to spend, $16,000, $18,000 a month just to rent a box so I could say we have church. Wouldn't it be nice to somewhere have a strategy when churches decline that we leave a legacy, we leave an inheritance, we pass the baton so that maybe our day of doing it has come and gone, but we could give it over to another Southern Baptist church planter, or as an association, we could put a catalytic church revitalizer and use it to begin to grow the church again. But that's not what I'm here in this session to talk about. I'm here, what do you do to turn around that small town church? Listen, all churches, whether you are 100 years old or less, when you're about year 35, by the way, you start to have problem replacing members. By the time you're 15 years old as a church, your plateau, your attendance is usually plateaued. So don't think that whether, church planters always tout and brag at, we come out of the chute and we're now running 125. Well, they started from dirt, they didn't exist before, it's easier. Now, when you've pastored or been in a church that's 100 and some years old, most of our churches are going to struggle with some degree of plateau. Not all churches, but a lot of our churches will. And here's why. You have the inability to regain critical mass necessary to regrow the church and utilize the tools that are needed. So we're going to talk about that. I kind of approached the subject earlier about critical mass, and if you remember, I said it takes at least what number of adults to keep a church moving? 50. It takes 50 adults. Now, just make sure you're still, you didn't go to sleep during lunch. What's the minute? Oh, thank you very much. I'll just leave it there. Save me some minutes on my thing there. Give that man a star. But 50 to 60 churches every week in North America close their doors. It's not the small town church as a whole. The church that is the most trouble closing is the church that runs about 150 to 350. They have everything that they really could want, but they can't seem to play together. They can't seem to stop arguing. There's always we'ses versus themins, which is terrible grammar, but great point. There's always us versus them, and and that can hurt and destroy the incredible fabric within God's loving church. Bill Day, by the way, he is the Associate Director of the Level College for Evangelism Church Health at the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary as the Gurney Professor of Evangelism Church Health. All right, that's his title. It takes 3 business cards to give it to you. But anyway, he did a study, a sequential study in 2003, 2007, 2010, and 2016 on the state of health of our churches in the Southern Baptist Convention. And he found out that 6.8% of our convention churches are healthy, growing churches. And that means 3,087 churches of 45,725 are healthy, growing churches. Abraham Lincoln, I already told you that, so God must love a small church. He made so many of them. I'm 2 slides ahead of you, so let me just go by that. And now we'll go right there. No wonder it didn't match. Carl S. Dudley, he was the professor of church community at McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago, Illinois. He says the break-even point for most small churches would be around 175 participants in Sunday school. I actually find that the 150 to 250 participant church is a delightful church to be a member of. It's a delightful church to be part of. It's big enough to do some cool things like Easter and Christmas and things like that, some things for the kids and things for children, but it's not so big that you don't know when the Browns are on vacation. It's not so big when you don't know that the pastor is gone. He does give one clear delineation, and I doubt we have any Mennonites sitting in the audience today, but if you were a Mennonite and you had a church of 75, you'd be a mega powerful church in the Mennonite movement. But let me talk to you about how you begin to revitalize a small church, and how do we define a small church. First of all, we define it by the number of members now, not yesterday. You know, do you have members in Missouri that the IRS can't find? We have those in Orlando, and they're grown. You know, we don't know where they are. You know, I had one church, you know, they're running a whopping 73, and they have a membership on their rolls on their ACP of over 400. I said, Jesus doesn't know where most of those people are, let alone, you know, why don't you clean your rolls? And what they eventually admitted after a whole week is that would acknowledge that we are a church in decline. I think the people know it, you know. Wouldn't be that hard to think. Another way we define church is worship attendance. Now, I'm not big on attendance numbers because, you know, you preachers lie. You know, and you know, someone said if I'm lying and you know I'm lying, then is it really lying? Yeah, it is. You know, anyway, so you know, a lot of times. Any of you guys have the Monday morning brag-offs? Do you guys have those on in Missouri? You know, well, I used to hate going to those. You know, we'd have some guy, well, God richly moved in our church yesterday, and you know, and I'm sitting there wondering, did he? Did he not? Is this, you know, prophetically speaking, or did he do it? You know, how about when you define your church with where you were in past days and when it was larger? You know, we all have some challenges where maybe in some of the past days they were larger. How about the image projected by a pastor's definition of comparative size? Most churches that are smaller churches, the way you grow and the way you learn is don't try to match some big church that you see on TV. Find a church about 100 people ahead of you and learn everything you can from that pastor. I remember when I was planning, I would always go make lunch appointments with guys which were about 100 to 115, 20 ahead of me. Because that was my next journey. That was where I was going to go next. And why not learn from those guys? Because they are literally going through what I'm getting ready to go through, and any experience I could learn from them would help me in my area. You know, some people will do size of buildings, and some people will do budgets and all of that. Well, my budget's this, and my budget's... I doubt God really gives a rip about your budget. You know, if you use it to brag, God certainly doesn't give a rip about it. But anyway, you know, how about the full workload of a minister? Our minister is full-time. Anybody here bivocational? Now, isn't that a joke? Because you all are full-time, you know. One of my favorite, I was telling Philip this on the way over this morning, my favorite meeting of the year is when I have the bivocational pastor's breakfast. I spend a whole year getting ready for it. If you're an author, I beg, borrow, and steal from you. I say, I need 25 of this, I need 25 of that. You know, I try to get them to give me everything they can give me so that when these pastors come to breakfast, I bless them. Last year we figured we blessed them with about $150 worth of books and about a $400 DVD. And you know, and they show up because one of the things they show up, they're going to get a whole commentary every year. So that's something at least, and it's electronic, so they can cut and paste it when they don't have time to study. I know none of you Bibles ever have to deal with that, but our guys aren't as spiritual in Orlando. But anyway, you know, but you've been there when you've had to work all week, you've had to deal with kids all week, you've had to do all the things in your family, and then you got 2 more funerals. Sometimes you have to catch it, get it and go. It's do the best you can with the amount of time. And excellence is doing the best with the resources that you have. And so I look forward to those times when we work together as Bibos and Director of Missions. You know, also some people talk about the quality of relationships and the face-to-face time, and I think that's pretty good. You know, a lot of people say that in most of the mainline denominations, all 8, 60% of their congregations are small churches, considered small churches. James Lowry said it this way, 40% of the clergy are serving 18% of the people and 62% of the churches in a situation that he says, I don't know that I agree with him, but he says that it's programmed for failure. And I think one of the reasons is his background is big church. His background is not small church. And for Lowry, he's looking at this is what you attain to. Listen, if you're pastoring a church, that's all you need to say. It's not what size it is, not who it is. It's you are being faithful right where God puts you. Right where God puts you. So let me give you at least 15 characteristics of how a small church doing revitalization in a small church, okay? Here are 15 elements that appear just predominantly throughout small churches that are healthy. And if you're going to be revitalizing a church at small that's in decline, you got to understand this. You need to know how to work through one central family church single-celled structure. All right? You know what I mean by that single-celled structure? That is that one of the churches I went to pastor, everybody's last name was Sylvia. So you better not tick off of Sylvia because, that would just run rampant. Some of you are smiling and you just put your name in the middle of that, didn't you? But anyway, and shaking your heads, one of the other great characteristics, and there's nothing wrong with family churches. I know for some it's hard, but listen, if you know how to keep your mouth shut and hold confidentiality, you'll survive a small church. It's if you can't keep your mouth shut as a pastor, you'll be in trouble pretty quickly because everybody's related to everybody else. But here's the cool thing about if you pastor a family church, and even if you're not even part of that family, and you don't have E.F. Hutton Neal back there in the back, but anyway, it's faster in a family church to get respect because you're doing things that many of them have never seen done. Most of that family has never seen the church grow. And part of the challenge, I remember one time when I went to a church in West Virginia, they said, basically don't go to this guy and this guy. Fast forward, both those guys became my best friend. One became my golfing buddy and chairman of deacons. One became my church moderator because I was too lazy to do it. And as a result, we worked together. You know what it was? Is the pastors were scared of those because they would ask the hard questions. Have you thought about this? No. Have you thought about, well, no. What those men were, they were anti-church. They were, if we're going to move forward, let's do it in a way that we've answered all the hard questions and we know what we're getting into. There's not a thing in the world wrong with that type of person, and yet sometimes as pastors, we get intimidated by the guy. He's for us. He's just asking, Pastor, have you thought about that? And if somebody would take a moment to think about it, he may be asking those hard questions so you can look brilliant in front of others. But that's another thought and another focus for another day. So there's one close family niche. It's one inwardly focused church. Your challenge is to start looking outside. It's been looking inside so long, and you got to start doing little things to start it. Like if you are blessed with a park, or if you're blessed with a downtown, maybe there's things you could do to start reaching people that aren't going to your church by ministering in parks, and in the summer maybe holding backyard Bible clubs and doing things like that. I went into ministry where I didn't have a budget. I didn't have a nickel. And I learned how to do backyard Bible clubs and vacation Bible schools and all that on nothing. There are churches all over the United States that will send you their materials. There are churches that will literally gratefully up all their vacation Bible school the week after because they're not keeping it. And all you got to do is during the year think about some of those and ask them. You'd be amazed. As a mission pastor, I saw that even in New England. People would send me their stuff and they'd do their VBS in June. Well, guess what? I had VBS in August. I had 60 days to get ready for VBS with all the material that I didn't spend a cent on. I'll never forget one time UPS pulls up and they delivered me this 4x8 cardboard box about that thick. And it was enough cool paintings on foam cord to decorate my whole sanctuary. Listen, people thought I was so cool that year. It took me a week to confess that it wasn't my stuff, it was somebody else's. But anyway, but you know what? There are churches that will do that for you. And if you're struggling, sometimes the best challenge is find those who believe in missions and have a missional stance and get them to help you. I will say one of the challenges in small churches is your governance. You may be doing some things where you've allowed things to go on that the governance issues is that, for example, your Constitution says that your deacons need to rotate off every 3 years, yet you got deacons been on there for 20 because no one's brave enough to live out the Constitution. Those are probably some things you got to address. Probably those type of questions, like Neil said, you need to ask before you go in. But I will say this about a small church. They are highly devoted to their church. And don't destroy that devotion. A lot of pastors that are micromanagers, they come into small churches and they also want to do everything themselves. Why? Man, I would rather go to a meeting with 20 people and give 20 things away than go not to that meeting and then have to do 20 things. Amen?
Amen.
And you know what I know about that? If I can give 20 people a ministry in the church, they're connected. And I also will tell you this, even if they do it 80% as well as I could have done it, that's still better in the long run because I now can take 20 other things and do them to the best of my ability. And guess who wins? The church every time. So don't avoid and don't run from some of the marvelous devotion that you have. If you're a pastor who comes in and everything's broken, you probably are going to be a danger and a detriment to a small church. But if you come in and will take people as they are, grassroots people with grassroots hearts for the Lord, God can do great things. You know, there are a lot of small, formerly small churches in small areas in America that are now big churches. You know, there are a lot of 700, 800 strong churches in rural communities in small town America that used to run about 100. And people are starting to come back to those areas. He is really preparing so when they come. How about, when you think about it, volunteers? A lot of pastors don't do enough work in small church revitalization and equipping volunteers. I know you all have to get a sermon ready, you all have to do a lot of things, but it's worth training volunteers. It's worth equipping volunteers. It's worth getting all the things that need to be done in the church, and even if it takes you an hour for every one of those positions, in the long run, you'll be better off as a church to equip volunteers and allow them to help you lead the church. You've got to help them lead, allow them to help you lead the church. Do you know that small churches practice what I call careful financing and management? They're careful. They want to know when you go out and buy $35 worth of stamps. Have you ever noticed that? You know, most other churches don't even care. You know, they want to know when you bought pizza for the youth group. I mean, I don't know that they're going to say no, but you know what I'm talking about. They want to know that. And it's not because they don't believe in those kids. It is because a lot of them came out of kind of a wartime mentality, a depression type mentality, and we're careful. We're careful. We're careful. My wife can squeeze blood out of a turnip. She grew up in that mentality from her father and very, very, very careful. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why God has blessed us, because she's done so many things to keep us careful. And you need to do that as a pastor. Here's another characteristic. Have you noticed in small church it is involvement focused, not quality focused? Have you noticed that? Now, I am a terrible singer. I'm what you call a letter singer. Do you know what that means? I open up a letter writer. But anyway, the only time I sound good is in the shower, and that's a word visual you didn't need. I know that. But that's about the only time that I sound decent singing. But in small churches, it's not about sounding like you're an opera star. It's about participation. And a lot of churches today try to push out participation in smaller churches for the best sounding voice in the church. Don't do that. In small churches, it's all about together. It's about being together, involvement over just one or two people who do it better than everybody else. Have you noticed in small churches, unless they're revitalizing, have few entry points. Coming through the Sunday school, coming through the children's department, if you have one, come through the church. About 3, maybe 4 if you have a youth group. Those are the entrance points. But if you're going to revitalize a small church, you got to look on ways you can add 8 new entrance points to a small church. For example, a pastor could teach, and you're welcome, pastors, I'm giving you another job to do, but you could teach new members class. That's a new entry point if you hadn't had one before. You could have a lady in the church who's a great Bible teacher do a mom's day out where the kids are taken care of in the nursery and moms come together for prayer and Bible study. That would be a new entrance point. You can take the Beth Moore this and the precept that, and there's a lot of things that you could do to add new entrance points to the church. You could teach kids proper grammar, and I don't mean that in a belittling way, but somehow or another we don't teach some things we used to teach. I can't do modern day math now. I can do math and give them the right answer, but the way they come at it, I think they throw it up in the air and they swing and they get it. But anyway, but you can do things to help after school. There's a lot of new entry points that could be done. You can sometimes, just to be fair, some of our very rural pastors, they just take care of kids in the afternoons. And I had one pastor say, who wasn't rural, he said, "You mean I went to seminary and all I get to do is take care of kids?" I said, "If you love Jesus, that would probably be enough." True. I take care, I do the nursery about once a year. I plan to take 2 days off afterwards just to recuperate. Which is why God called me to preach instead of anything else, because I had an easy out not to be in the nursery. But I'm getting ready to be a granddad, and I'm going to have to get over it fast. I'm scared to death, I'm going to always take my wife, so when it's diaper duty, I have a good replacement. But anyway, and some of you women don't feel bad for me at all, But also, you notice that in small churches, when you do revitalization, it's emphasized on one event at a time. It's not 12 things going on. We're going to have this, and then we're going to accomplish it. We're going to do that, and then we're going to accomplish it. It is singularly focused, but you have multiple things that once we do this and get it done, then we'll do that and get it done. And you just kind of do one thing at a time, and you recoup. Maybe you grow by one person. Maybe you grow by 2 people. That is enough in small town revitalization. You have to begin to work on commitment. When those new people come in, they don't come in giving a 10% tithe. Did you know that? They come in, you have to train them. So who's going to train them? It may be a deacon, it may be a Sunday school teacher, but what are the things you're going to do that when new people come in? A small church grows and revitalizes through active laity. Hear me. Active laity. The larger church, people want to be what I call staff-led, which isn't anything wrong, but in small churches, you don't have that big of staff to do everything in the life of the church. It takes all of us. It takes all of us. So you got to have the whole laity involved, not just a few. Growth and revitalization in a small church, is cluster related. I'm going to just take this group right here as a cluster. And they all, they hang together, they do church together, and what's the name of the green shirt? I can't read it over there. Doug. And Doug comes in, and they don't quite swarm him like hornets, but they strategically whisper. Pam says, "Hey, let's go get Doug." And all of a sudden, before you know it, she's over there, and Terry's over there, and Marvin's over there, and before you know it, Doug says, "Wow, I have people who are actually interested in me." That is the way small church revitalization works. It is cluster related. Pastor, I know you're important, you lead, but you can only do so much, and frankly, a lot of the time you're up getting ready doing this or doing that. It takes leading your people to learn how to do those things. The growth print in revitalizing a small church is small group and cluster design. Sometimes we try to make it so much bigger than it is, and when we turn around small churches, 35 to 75, it's those little closed clusters. That's why you got to be careful as a leader. You can't just walk around ticking everybody off, because all of a sudden there'll be so many clusters against you. Also, you got to draw participants for a variety of reasons. Now, we'll just say Doug over there, he's an avid fisherman. And Marvin says, "Fisherman?" And the ladies say, "Oh no, another fishing widow, type, deal." But all of a sudden Doug says, "Hey, I have found some brothers in the Lord that I can do life." Men, one of the reasons, and the reason we brought Doug Morrow to Renovate this year, he wrote the book Why Men Hate Going to Church, is men don't mind, they like connecting on spiritual things. But here's the point, seldom do they want to do it in the church. They want to hang, I'll tell you one of the cool ways to connect with men, feed on meat. Give me steak, give me hamburgers, You know why wild game parties are one of the most popular things in churches? Because men get to eat meat and act manly. Have any of you men ever sang at a church where, I'll just say, you had to look down and see if you hurt yourself? The song is so high, the music is made for women, some of you ladies caught what I was talking about, okay, way to stay up there. Men have one of the reasons men don't sing in church is because it's too high-pitched, it's too, and so men want to connect on other things, outings, breakfasts. And you guys do pancake breakfasts? You get more men coming. I don't do, let's all come men and women to breakfast. Let's have men, some bring sausage, you bring pancakes, I bring syrup, and it's amazing. I know you ladies are thinking, he is such a jerk, but he's going home tomorrow. But if you want to reach men, you got to start doing things where you connect men in clusters. Men want to hang with men. One of the coolest things I ever was part of, I didn't think of this, but it was worth my time. When I lived in Atlanta, I went to a group that I showed up once a month at 6 a.m. in the morning at a church. And 6 a.m. to 7:30, we had this thing called Band of Brothers. And somebody gave us, Chick-fil-A chicken biscuits for breakfast, but we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And then we prayed some more, ate a biscuit, and ran out the door so we could all get to work. There were more men attending that type of thing than attended the church on Sunday. Men aren't opposed to praying. Men aren't against doing some of the things. But to be fair, sometimes we've allowed our churches to become a little girly. And that could be because there's more women going to church, so I understand the other side of that. But if you want to get men in your church, you got to kind of get men back doing the things that men like to do. Eat meat. All right. I got off that soapbox, and we'll keep moving. What is a small church's strength, and what is a small church's weaknesses? Let me give you 8 enlargement obstacles. Like a small church plant, has incomplete programming. But you know what? That means you have people that can volunteer. A small church has very little outreach or evangelism. There's always room for somebody when they come in. If they have a heart for evangelism, they can join you. A small church can rear smallness if it does not keep a growth mentality clearly before the people. You can get stuck as a small church by doing nothing. You got to always keep it before your people. Just keep it before your people. It's not like we're going to go evangelize the whole town. Well, to be fair, if you're running 150, why not? But I mean, but just start with one. I'll never forget that, they told me, they said, you just can't go see Ron Vaughn. I said, why not? He said, oh, he's the one that threw the last preacher off the porch and broke his arm, And I said, you're right. I don't think I want to see Ron Vaughn. But anyway, one day God kind of just should have stayed in bed late that day. But anyway, God just said, you need to go see him. And I said, oh, Lord, no, I don't. He said, no, you do. And I went, and he knocked on his door. You ever see those guys that wear those kind of white T-shirts that just have all their muscles going out of it? I don't have that body, but anyway, so he comes to the door, and he says, what do you want? I said, Avon calling. He didn't think that was funny. I said, my name's Tom Cheyney. I'm the pastor of Calvary Church. And he said, what are you here for? I said, I'm here to talk to you about Jesus. And then I cringed. He said, come on in. I've been waiting for someone to talk to me. And within about 2 hours, I led him to the Lord. I get ready to leave, and he says, have you seen my wife? I said, no, honest, I haven't. He said, well, she'll be home with the kids and wait. Yes, sir. And you know what happened that day? I led him to the Lord, his wife to the Lord, and their 2 kids to the Lord. A small church isn't about always being so busy that you don't have time just to stop everything you're doing and sit there with Muscle Man. And you know what we did for about 2 hours talking after he came to know the Lord? We just talked about Jesus. He just asked me things like, how how do you read a Bible? And I told him I start with the Gospel of John. So I gave him my Bible, and I said, here. He said, well, what do I do after that? I said, well, I would tell you to go to Ephesians, and why is that? And I said, because I'll teach you how to act as a Christian, meaning you won't throw the next guy off the balcony, smallness doesn't keep you from revitalizing your church. Perhaps the most important thing you will find is maybe it's time that you get the chance to become more of a witness, personal witness, because you have the time where some others don't. Sometimes in a small revitalization, money gets tight. Anybody know that feeling? But you know what your best resource is in a small church? It is you and it's me. It doesn't cost you anything for me to go visit. It doesn't cost the church anything for you to go visit. You got to start touching these people in your community. You got to start looking also about, have you come to a place where your leadership is kind of entrenched? It's hard, but you got to start bringing new people into that form of leadership. You got to stop thinking mere existence, and you got to start thinking, we are here for the long term. Here are 9 strengths, by the way, that you ought to think about. You have laity own a small church, amen? You do. There is a vision to reach the community. They may not be doing it, but you have a vision to do it. You work hard, and your pastor works hard. Amen? Those are one of the things. Let me click to the next slide. Sorry about that. You usually have a very supportive pastor's wife. Amen? Some of you blink, so I might have to go there longer. But anyway, you have the strength of lay people who invest their time. They show up and fix sprinklers. They show up and, paint a Sunday school room. They clean up after this and they clean up at that. That is a strength. In small revitalization churches, people are committed. They invest highly in the church. They desire for it to succeed. Neil said something that I thought was just hugely wise. He said some of these young punks come in and they try to turn everything around. It's not your job to fix everything when you come to revitalize a small church, because some of the things you think need to be fixed really don't. They've been working well. It's finding the new things that will help you. There is the strength of facilities. It may not be the biggest facility in town, but there's the strength of having one. The strength of you do things the right way. In fact, sometimes for some of you, it may kill you that they always do it exactly the right way. Pastor, I saw you move the doxology to after the sermon today. Was there a reason for that? In the book of Second Opinion, it's not there. You have the strength of fellowship. Can I tell you guys something? Any of you guys pastor small churches? Your fellowship dinners are the best. A small church fellowship dinner. I was just at one. We just honored a pastor, one of our rural pastors, 20 years in ministry there. I never ate so good. Cheryl at home, we got home that she's like, want dinner? No, I'm still recuperating from the blessing I had at noon. They have fellowship. They have the strength of baptism. When people are baptized, it is, and oh, isn't that cute? It's, hey, so-and-so got baptized, and cards and letters and notes and things become to go around. Let me give you 8 factors that influence whether you will revitalize or not. You got to stop thinking that a small church is a branch office. You are the church. You're not part of another, you are it. Stop looking for someone to merge with, okay? Just lay the line in the sand, draw the line in the sand and say, this is our community and we're going to claim it for Jesus. And Pastor, if you can't do that, get out. How about this? Do everything you can in that community to reinforce community. Any of you guys go and gals go to PTA? No? Well, maybe you ought to. You know what? Believe me, PTAs are desperate. They'll take anybody, even preachers. If you know how to pick up trash after a football game, you're in. And let me chase that rabbit. Sometimes small churches turn around in those type of communities because they will take the crummy job in a festival and the crummy job in a this and or that, and they'll do things that most people in that community won't do. I'll never forget that we had a hot air balloon festival and nobody wanted to pick up the trash. And I'm in a Rotary meeting and I said, well, we'll do that. I was hoping I'd have others besides my wife and I do it, but anyway, and we spent the whole weekend with shirts on picking up trash for Jesus, and that's what it said on the back of the church. You know, back of the shirts, Calvary Baptist, picking up trash for Jesus. You know what happened the next year? They said, you know, Dr. Cheyney, if you'd like to have a booth, we'd be glad to give you a booth. You know, as long as I keep picking up the trash. But anyway, I said, you know, we'll pick up the trash and we'll take a booth. So you know what we put at the booth? Tracts. And we all of a sudden, where they wouldn't give us anything by picking up trash the first year, and you know that church is still picking up trash for Jesus. You know, small churches don't have a lot of money, but it has enough people to show up and pick up trash. How hard we even made the church members buy their own t-shirt. You know, that's how broke we were, you know. So, you know, picking up trash for Jesus. I wish I would have kept mine. But anyway, you reinforce community. You know, as you start to develop partners in your community, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a high school, a middle school, whatever, you begin to increase your vulnerability, and as a result, they find out, you know, those church people, they're not bad. You know what? Some of them are even funny, you know, but they sure love this community. I wish I loved this community. Another thing that works in small church is the more you get out in the community, you become one of the most social churches in the community. Now, here's what I know. In some rural churches, churches are turned so inward that it's like they are a castle with no windows. Open up those windows. Get out where the people are. I know some of them are going to be lost, and some of them are going to be drunkards, and some of them are going to be this and that. You know what? Jesus loved them anyway. That's one of the great efforts in revitalization. Has anything I shared been really difficult? No. How about you share experiences? One of the things I used to do all the time, and it made my financial people concerned, I went to church for everybody. Anybody know who Bob Ross was, the painter guy? Well, we had a lady, Sulaine Brooks, and she, when I finished one of my doctorates, I told my wife I was going to learn to paint. And after she fell over on the side of the bed laughing, 2 months later I went and learned how to paint. Well, in the midst of that, she was my instructor, and she said, I need a place to meet. I didn't even ask anybody. I said, well, just come in on Friday. We'll open up the door. We'll take good care of you. And you can have your, 8 people and a little bit of coffee. It wasn't going to break us, you know, type deal. And then the Boy Scouts said, hey, I hear there's a group painting. Could we use the room, the fellowship hall on Monday night? Sure you can. You know, on and on it went. You know, there were people saying, you know, we spent electric for that. But you know what it did for the life of our church? We started being known as the church that knew how to say yes. Mm-hmm. What are you saying in your doors? Are you saying yes? Or are you saying no? A lot of our churches miss at times that we are here to say yes. Let me go on quickly. I know it's time, and I'll try to catch us up just a little bit here. Can I get 5 more minutes? Give me 3 minutes over. But anyway.
You might miss your plane tomorrow. But
all right, that's all right. I know. I was there, you know. There's a centrality of how you worship. You know, when we worship together, we all sing, we all do. The small church is strongest when it comes to worship. You know, we don't have 40 small groups that are really, really large. Our one large church experience is worship. And there's strength in that. It's one for all for one type thing. You know, it's lay dominated. And I know for some of you as pastors, you wish it wasn't, but it's probably the best thing that it is. Revitalization in a small church has to be lay dominated. It's got to be lay dominated. It's got to be the lay people doing most of the work. Larger churches, we want to be so, you know, program-led and staff-led, and they're literally people sitting in big churches that want to do nothing, but they want the staff to be worn fragged, you know. Not in a small church. We're going to roll up our sleeves. You ever know, you know how if you're in a church that is lay dominated, you show up for a work day and they say, now Pastor, you don't have to cut the grass. Why don't you just rake up after us, you know? And I know you got to keep your voice for tomorrow. Man, in another church, it's like, Pastor, you can run the backhoe and sit out in the sun all day. We don't care. You know, but in a small church, they what? They protect the office of their pastor. They protect their pastor. They are lay dominated. They are more committed to the whole, all of us, as compared to small of us. In small churches, you grow together. In large churches, you grow by becoming small churches. Well, let me just wrap up with this. Here's some quick ingredients. If I were you, I would really tell you, seek to continually build momentum in your church. Just seek to build momentum. I'm going to give you a blog of mine that's out in my blog. I'll have it attached to the free giveaways that you guys filled your name out. You got to build momentum. You got to keep building momentum. It's one, ever feel like in ministry it's 3 steps forward, but 2 steps back? But if you're a math genius, what did you just gain? And I found out, it's an amazing thing in math. 1 + 1 = 2. + 1 = 3. You may not get there fast, but you eventually get there. All right. Here's some quick things, and then we'll close this puppy up. You got to pray and teach your people to pray. I've said that a lot. You got to stop talking about it and start praying. You got to preach and keep praying and develop that, understand that ministry is about prayer first. And God seems to show up as his people come before his presence. And I know a lot of times we just don't want to pray and we don't want to do that. But, you know, if the small church in American heartland is to survive, it is already, but it needs to be reminded that it needs to continually be a praying people. You know, you can come into a community and, you know, in an urban center and, you know, you're going to have 200 people join the community a day. Even a bad church can catch 1 or 2 of those. But in a rural situation, small town America, it is that prayer that sets you apart. I'm not trying to pick on churches, but not every church is a praying church. And somehow when people, I walk into churches all the time. My whole month of May is I'm walking into churches and I feel it and I don't feel it. But you know when you're in a church where God is just lifted up daily and people pray. And you feel like, oh, so good. It's like a nice warm shower. But you've been in other churches where you walk in and you walk back out to see if there's some writing on the top of the wall, you know. You got to get back to praying. Get back praying. So those are some characteristics. One of the things you got to be careful of is don't stall when you achieve a goal. Stop thinking about the good old days. Stop thinking that, oh, we're stagnant. No, you're not. You just need to keep reaching out to other people. You know, just keep making correct transitions, meeting new people. Don't be afraid of senior influence in the life of that church. Learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and turn outward way before you ever turn inward. And so those are some of the ideas we have for revitalization in the small church. By the way, if you will go to the Renovate website, there is a 5-part deal on this, 5 PowerPoints, 5 audios, and 5 manuscripts on, 4 of each, and that will give you some ideas for taking